Welcome to Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories from the Texas outdoors. Today I sit down with another personality who used to run along with the likes of Wade Duncan and Tom Kilgore, finding a unique passion for flounder fishing. This is my conversation with Rick Guerrero.
All right, well, you're okay. Well, I'm ready to rock and roll. So I got Mr. Rick Guerrero on, and this one's going to also be exciting because you've been able to spend so much time with guys like Tom, Wade, as well as Chuck, and we'll get into all of that. But real quick, do you want to give like an introduction before we get into it?
As far as
who you are, what you do, your fishing, maybe just kind of a brief little quick summary.
Well, I'm Rick Guerrero. Grew up here in Harlingen, in the agriculture business, landscape business, and growing up, really didn't get into fishing the lower Laguna until probably in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I think we tried to do more fishing when there was not any surf, because we did surf a lot.
Mm-hmm. Priorities.
So when the waves weren't happening, we were looking for fish in the bay. And started fishing. I knew some of the older guys that I knew at the time that inspired me to hunt the type of fish we like to catch. Was Gary Gunzel, the late Gary Gunzel from Harlingen. Ali Bastedo, he fished a lot. I knew he had fished Alaska and the lower Laguna as well. Became friends and took off from there. We started fishing Mexico, like in the 80s. Mm-hmm. We would either drive down there in a truck, camp out for 2 or 3 days, fish the passes. Rarely fished the
interior
Laguna.
Yeah.
In the shallows. We mostly fished in the surf, and we started at first just throwing cut bait, which was kind of what everybody did. Mm-hmm. And then we realized, man, we just changed the plastic, and the next thing you know, we're catching the same amount of fish and a little bit better quality of fish.
And not spending money on bait.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's run it from the very beginning. Give me your, like, the first memory you have in the outdoors, and then kind of let's just get the Rick Guerrero experience. Your kind of chronological progression as an outdoorsman. You said it yourself. You were agriculture first, and then you got into the fishing. So your first memory in the outdoors might be a little bit more different and agriculture based, but it doesn't matter. The context is still the same. I kind of want to know how you were in the outdoors and how, because at the end of the day, there was nothing that truly made you who you were. Like, you had to become that. Does that make sense?
Somewhat. Growing up, of course, family priority, working for my dad, we had to get the work done.
Yeah.
So any chance we got after work, we'd go to the outdoors, whether we were fishing or hunting at the time of the year. My dad wasn't much of a fisherman at the time. Of course, we developed the urge to catch fish and just hang out with our friends and get away and do things. Mm-hmm. And one of those main things was either surfing or fishing.
I get it. I mean, that's kind of the thing. But anyways, all right. So we're in the 70s. You start fishing the Laguna in the 70s. Kind of run me through what that was like. We mentioned Mexico, but I'm also very curious about what it was like on the other side. I mean, this is before the freezes, so I mean, like the fish, the availability. Like, I'm interested in all of that.
Well, one of my most fond experiences was going north to the land cut. Mm-hmm. And that was an adventure in itself, because not very many people at that time that I knew were going to the land, as far as the land cut. Mm-hmm. We packed up and had a glass-drawn boat, walked through windshield, kind of a deep water boat, stayed in the channel, fished the outer edges. But then when the tides got a little higher, we could venture out off the edge of the deep water, and always kept in mind
This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy & Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy & Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself preparing for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a visit at www.gordyandsons.com.
For the wind to drift us over towards deep water with a boat like that. We didn't have the shallow water skiffs or scooters at the time. But going up to that area in the land cut in February, cool weather, wearing a heavy jacket, and God, the amount of redfish, thousands of redfish. And there were east of the intercoastal back towards the island. And we'd catch fish till, we'd get our limit, and we'd move over to the spoil dumps. There's a few spoil dumps. Mm-hmm. It went from big redfish to the spoil dumps that one of the guys called Candyland. And Candyland was big trout.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right on the edges in shallow water, normally about 18 inches of water, where sometimes you could see them. And the wintertime depends how that north wind might have been blowing at the time, or south wind. Water gets a little cloudy, you don't really see them. But mostly we were throwing spinning rod with gold spoons. As time went on, we just started going to plastic. But there was times moving back, fish in our area, so we didn't have as much time in the day to make a long all-day kind of fishing trip.
Yeah.
I'd pack up with Wade Duncan. Him and I put a boat together. I had a boat, a little Boston Whaler 13, and he had a 25-horse outboard, and we burned up the bay with that. six gallons at a time.
That's awesome.
So he also worked. He was working at the bank, so his free time was after 5, after 6. So a lot of times we'd go fish at night. We'd fish under the causeway. The spoil dumps that are no longer today are not there. The trout bar, those were exposed at that time, and they were up pretty high, 4 or 5 feet above the water when they dredged that intercoastal. We'd catch our fish and wind up cleaning fish the next morning because we had to go to work or right after work. We ventured over to the port and did some snook fishing or any kind of fishing. Caught some small tarpon in there at a time or two, but mostly snook and mangroves. And just had a great time.
Yeah. When did you transition over into the fly rodding, or was that kind of before you met Wade?
Probably after I met Wade. I had a very close friend that opened up a lodge in Mexico at Casablanca.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah,
that's
Bobby Jack Settles.
pretty well known lodge.
Yeah, he had a operation down there fly fishing and had people that were booked. You'd have to book a year and a half in advance to get a spot on that island. And I caught bonefish, I caught tarpon on a fly, and I remember the flies were real kind of prehistoric.
In what way?
Feathers, chicken, rooster feathers we'd tie with some small copper wire, and we'd go up into the mangroves and had the guide push us through mangroves. We'd go into an open area where the mangroves would open up, and all of a sudden you'd see 7 or 8 tarpon charging towards a boat. And that excitement, man, where I remember one particular time throwing a fly at a tarpon, coming at it, and the guide's going, he's got it. And I visually saw the tarpon swallow the fly, but I froze and didn't set the hook. And then he spits it out, and it puffed out like
right in front of you.
Just a puff of feathers coming out of his mouth, and the guide's going, he doesn't have it. And all this it's like slow motion. And then he says, okay, he's got it. And on the second time, I whacked him.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, what about like big trout? Like, so you mentioned Candyland. I'm very interested in some of the stories you have sight fishing those trout. I know that one of your favorite things is also the flounder stuff, and we'll get into that as well. So we have a bunch of stuff to get into, but my thing is I want to kind of piece together maybe what the average day really looked like back then, at least in your shoes.
Well, I'll go back to that land cut. It's a memorable trip.
Yes.
Ali Bastedo and Tom Kilgore met my dad and myself out there. We got together out in the water for lunch, but we already had a box full of fish and ready to come home. And when we got to Candyland, which is along the intercoastal off the dumps where the shallower water was, it's still today the same way here where we fish here, Gaswell Flats, get on the shorelines, and I've realized that the big trout are in areas that we fish that are very soft walking. I mean, we like to wade fish. And so we've had to get creative to catch those big trout. And I mean, they'll see you, well,
Yeah.
your experience, that they'll see you way before you see them.
One of my like to piggyback on that, one of my favorite stories that Wade ever told me was taking those big trout up on the sand where they have to like crawl up to him.
Oh,
but
yeah.
the way he says it's so funny. He'd be like, "Yeah, man, that's the big black wolf, man." It gets the message so right, and I think that's the perfect way to call those big fish because they're so. Like, how do you put it? Like, they're so dialed in on their surroundings, and they could tell.
Oh, they'll see you. They'll see you a long ways away. And I would see Wade, or I would see somebody else I may be fishing with. You'd have to walk on tiptoe in to the water. You're walking on hard sand if you're on the east side. So in order to, instead of shuffling your feet, we hardly ever worried about stingrays, in that water because you could see them. But you tiptoe and make the least amount of wake that you're pushing because those fish, the minute they see a little wake, they're not going to hit anything.
They don't even spook away. They just kind of slowly swim. Like they want you to like look and be like, man, you could have had it, but you didn't.
One good story I remember about Tom Kilgore and the master of catching those big trout with a fly is even though I believe they might have seen him, big trout. He said, I'd throw at him until I'd kind of make them angry. And out of frustration, they would hit that fly and he'd get them.
With that snapping shrimp.
Yeah.
Did you ever take one on the sand?
No, we kind of stayed on the west side of the intercoastal back from Stover Cove, which is Laguna Heights, Laguna Vista.
Yep.
North, we follow that shoreline. We like to fish the way as far back as we could go, and then we get out and walk. Yeah. And like I said earlier, the experience of catching the bigger trout is in real soggy bottom, so it's a workout. I remember fishing one of the TIFF tournaments, and that was a tough one. It was a 2-day tournament. Fishing with my daughter, my wife, and Chris Daniels. And my daughter and I got out to fish, and we were north of gas wells. And it's sinking to my knees in mud, but you just sit there and wait. And I'm with my daughter, and I had a good trout that day. For the first day weigh in, I had maybe a 6-pound trout.
It's a good fish.
Second day, I already had my good reds and my flounder for the first day. And second day, I already had a flounder and a decent red. I said, we got to go back. I didn't catch a trout in the morning. Went back over there, and my daughter says, Dad, why do you keep coming to this place? I said, because the big trout are here. Yeah. And right as I said that, I hit one, and she swam to me full throttle, man. And she's shaking her head. And I said, that's why we come back here.
Candyland number 2.
Yeah. And that thing threw the bait at me right 5 feet from me. Yep. And that was that. But that was close.
Yeah. So we kind of got into the 80s for a little bit. Before the freeze, is there any notable notes that you have there you want to go over, which is the 83 freeze?
Before the 83?
Yeah, so the 83 and then the twin of 89.
Right. before that, I mean, there was.
If you're enjoying this episode or any others and want to support the project, I would highly encourage you to check out my new book, Laguna. 288 pages with over 300 images and illustrations, containing excerpts by Eric Glass, Chuck Nizer, Tim O'Brien, Bill Gamble, Ben Paschal, Ryan Sparrow, Michaela Elliott, Rick Hartman, Yako Lucas, John Pilmer, Corey Bauman, Brian Robinson, and myself. Available at select stores, or you can order it directly at buylagunabook.myshopify.com.
There were so many fish, we didn't have to venture out as far as we do after the freeze, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We lost so many big fish, and it took some time to come back. But I've seen a lot more big trout this year than I've seen in years. I don't know that that's attributed to the reduction of the limit and the size limit, because a lot of people don't know how to catch a big trout.
Interesting.
And the ones that do catch big trout, they let them go. It's frustrating to hear somebody say, "Man, you guys are killing all these fish, and you shouldn't keep any fish." Well, I said, "Man, if you fish with my wife, myself, and with Chris Daniels, that we fish often, we've seen lots and lots of big trout, where people that don't go fish where we fish in the skinny water, other than you guys with the skiffs. So we get to a certain point when it gets too shallow, we get out and walk, and I don't mind walking a half a mile.
Yeah.
Walk until we find the spot. And in doing that, when you find your fish, you just sit tight, you're sight fishing. We've been in skinny water where my wife has probably caught 2 trout in the over 25 inch and thrown, she said she threw at least 12 black tails that were in the bigger than that, up to 30s.
Oh man. And, I forgot. I'll show you a video of one that's like, it's so black compared to the white sand under it.
Yeah.
And the belly on it is so white that it looks like almost like a killer whale. It's so dark. Yeah. Or like the one I caught that I sent you the other day with a really dark back. Yeah. I love it when they have that dark contrast on them.
It's funny that in the areas where they hang out, they blend in so well. And actually, I think they get some of the, if the water's murky, they get some of that murkiness in under their scales, and it darkens up the fish.
Interesting.
Whereas if they're in clear water, they're a little bit lighter color on top, like on the sand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the fillets are different as well. When you catch a medium trout on the west side where the water's murky, the fillets are a little different. You catch them on the sand, a little lighter colored fillet, and in the surf, I mean, the fillets are pink, really, really clear looking.
Interesting. I mean, you think that has to do with like the flesh being more muscly, less fatty?
No, I think it's the water that they're
they're hunting in. Yeah, I just thought maybe all that current on the surf, and they're always swimming, so they don't get a chance to like really get fat, right? So it has to be straight muscle. That's what I was thinking. Well, so let's keep going down the list, right? So what do you have next on that list, and we'll go that way.
Well, kind of we went over a little bit about when we put that little skiff together, and then the glass-drawn 16-foot tri-hull that we fished up in the land cut and fished here. Always had to kept in mind the southeast wind. If we were fishing southeast wind, and we could go as far as the sand on it and shut down and then drift out. Always drift back to the intercoastal where we can get up. And then after that, we built a scooter, a 16-foot scooter, put the same motor off that Glastron on it, a 70 horsepower Johnson, and no steering wheel. We'd drop it in and just lean on it, put it in reverse, circle around, and take off. And that's when we started getting into the skinny water.
Yeah. And
that was probably like in 1980, 82.
Heard.
We probably fished with live bait a handful of times, and it was just so frustrating to have to either catch trash fish or constantly reaching in for more bait. And then my daughter or my son, when they were little, they would reel that all the way up to the eye of my rods and knock out the porcelain off the tip. So
starts breaking the line when you start casting.
that ended my career fishing with bait. And one of the funny things, I don't know if some people always thought that we'd come in from fishing and they'd look at me and they'd look at the boat. First thing they do is look at the baits you're throwing.
Mm-hmm.
We had a box full of fish and they're looking at the baits and they're going, hey, I can't believe you guys take the time to stop and everybody put a red and white cocoa on your rod. And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, all your rods have the same bait. I said, yeah, that's what we use. He goes, nah, that's impossible.
Nah, they don't eat that.
So I have probably been throwing the same 4-inch plastic red whitetail cocoa for over 20 years.
Really?
And the only bait I do change occasionally is for flounder.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll put a smaller bait on,
Wow.
which is about a 2-inch grub.
That's actually really interesting that you say that. The more that I've spent really on the water, like just in the last couple of days, out of the last 120, maybe 140, I think I've been on the water at least 100. The more time I spend on the water, the more I realize that like lure and lure selection only goes so far unless like the watercolor really is something dirty. Because I mean, I've been throwing pretty much just white woolhead mullets at them for months now. And it does everything you needed to do. In fact, I think one of the most important things about fly selection or lure selection is just the sink rate. But I want to know what you think about that.
Well, my favorite depth of water to fish, and I've had success in, is about 18 inches of water.
Mm-hmm.
We rarely fish 36, 40-inch water. And since we wade 90% of the time, we target the fish in that area. And I know the sinking rate, what you're talking about, is either going with a 1/8 ounce lead head, which one of our partners, Chris Daniels, uses exclusively a 1/8 ounce lead head. My wife and I both use 1/4 ounce lead heads, whether it's 18 inches of water, 24 inches max,
Mm-hmm.
and are very successful with catching fish that way.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I forgot to mention is who were some of the people in the late 80s or mid 80s that when you're getting into all this and you're fishing harder and harder, that were, I guess you could say, at the top of the game, or guys that you wouldn't look up to, but maybe guys that you felt like you could compete with and stuff like that? Because I know obviously we get into the tournaments here in a little bit.
Well, I would say the reason we've talking about tournaments is it's been a real family-oriented fishing for my family, and we enjoy it. You know, so that keeps us together. Now with the grandkids around, they're the next generation that are going to be wade fishing with me. I've got a 5-year-old son, grandson Roman, that he's starting to cast, but he's out there wading with us.
Mm-hmm.
And to see a 5-year-old kid out there, and he doesn't know anything about potential stingrays, but
Keep shuffling them feet.
yeah, shuffle them feet.
Well, the reason I ask is because I mean, like, I agree that now the way that you're explaining the fishing, it's family oriented. But in order to be running around in the '80s with Wade Dunkin, Tom Kilgore, Chuck Skates, Ali Bastero, you weren't fishing for fun. You were fishing hard. Like, you had to be one of those guys. So, like, what I'm saying is, from that point, from being in that group, that little who's who circle, is there anyone in or around that circle that are honorable mentions, people who fish just as hard that, I may have not known of yet? That's kind of why I ask.
Well, that circle of friends that you're talking about that we looked up to both some of those guys, not just in fishing, but in what they did, and you just learn whether they were surfing, fishing, or hunting. And it was those same guys you mentioned, Gary Gunsel.
I forgot Gary, yes.
Tom Kilgore. He was Ali Bastedo, Wade. Had another friend that I didn't have the opportunity, still a friend of mine. Haven't had the opportunity to fish as much as I wish I could have fished with him. He's a very knowledgeable, real good friend of Wade, was Adan Arambula.
I haven't heard that name.
Yeah. He is, he's real quiet. He doesn't talk much, but he knows he's a master at what he does. Wow. And when he picks it up, he masters it. And he lives here in Harlingen. He's I would say a fabricator, master mechanic.
Tradesman.
He does it all. He hunts, fishes, and he's gotten away from it because other things have come into his life, whether it's racing cars or his grandson racing cars. I learned a lot from those guys. Discipline on.
In what way?
Well, if we're fishing, for example, in a certain area, if I was fishing with people that I might have invited a few people from time to time, and we'd get to a spot and we may not pick up a fish for 15 minutes, and they're going, let's move. There's boats over there. The fish aren't here. What I've learned is that patience, and I think that patience kind of follows through with flounder fishing.
I was going to segue into that right after. Okay, I'm glad you did.
Flounder fishing, I became real passionate about catching them, and I've only gigged flounder with Ali and Tom Kilgore one time back in the early '80s at the East Cut. We had a pretty good time, but it just wasn't.
Wasn't what it was set out to be.
It wasn't. You say, well, have you ever been flounder gigging? Well, yeah, I have. Have you been anymore? Nah, I really don't want to. But one of the things about catching flounder is the patience that you have to have. And we have walked, I'd say we've walked 100 yards and maybe 2.5 hours, if it takes 2.5 hours to catch a flounder. Well, I know they're there. And the bite might not be on, but walking slow and casting from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock back and forth every 5 feet, because I know those fish are laying on the bottom now. They may be facing me depending on the current, or they may be facing the other way. And I've always thought, well, I'll get a bait right over the top of them. They may not be ready to bite, but one of a memorable, real good one, a $50,000 memorable trip was when I took my daughter. My dad and myself took my daughter. She was 10 years old. We had registered for the Star first year, that CCA Star. It was back then GCCA, Gulf Coast Conservation. And we were at the Dunkin channel. I was in the water, holding the boat, trying to keep it as quiet as we could on a drop off, and probably caught 5 or 6 flounder, nothing real good. And man, all of a sudden, my daughter sticks a good one, and I'm in the water. I put my rod in the boat. My dad hands me the big dip net, tournament net, and I know I have about an 18-inch leader is what I tie. And she's bringing that fish up, and the minute my dad said, "Oh, it's a big one," man, I panicked. I waited, and instead of what we know we should do, don't ever net a fish until you see his head and net him head first. I saw that leader, and I had such a big dip net. I said, well, I'm going to try to get him. See, it was a big one. And dang, if I didn't hit that leader and he took off, she almost lost the rod out of her hand. And circle back around, and I'm talking to myself. I'm going, I'm not going to net him till I see his head, man. Until it's I
talking
finally
yourself
got
through
him.
it.
And that was the winning fish. That was a $50,000 fish.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what started your passion for flounder? And the reason I ask is because from someone who has had time to spend sight casting at herds of redfish, like in the thousands, as well as a lot of big trout in different areas, I would have thought that maybe a sight fishing element would have been your passion, but it seems like it's the exact opposite. Is there a particular reason or a story that caused you to feel that way about that fish?
I don't know. It may be like catching a big trout that swims at you the minute you hook him, and he shakes her head and throws that bait out. And the flounder, I mean, if you get into a good flounder session and you stick 10 of them, you're going to lose about 6 of them before you net them. They're unless the bite is so strong that they inhale it. But most of the time, what a flounder will do is he'll strike a bait. I've seen him strike. Wade and I both walking the shoreline, and the mullet flying out of the water, and you can see a flounder jumping out of the water.
Yep.
And what they do is they'll sting with their teeth. They'll bite that finger mullet, and they don't eat it. They hit it with their teeth, and it stuns it, and they'll start swimming in a little circle on the surface of the water, and we'll see that flounder come up and bite, take that mullet head first.
Wow, I've never seen that. I've seen them blow up on shorelines. Like there was the TIFF that I actually won on the fly division. We had patterned out some mullet on a shoreline, and it would be like you'd be pulling, all of a sudden, like little explosions on the shoreline, and you'd get up, and then I was fishing with Rick Hartman at the time. He'd be like, "All right, just keep casting and don't stop, like just whatever you do." And I'm like, "Rick, I don't know if this is gonna," and it's like stuck. And I was like, "Oh no!" And so we grab it, and the line comes off. Like the second that fish gets lifted in the net, bing, comes off, and it was like, "Oh my goodness!"
But when I had another flounder experience, which was, people would ask me, Rick, I always see you fishing over there on the north side of the arroyo. What are you catching? I said, well, I just kind of like that place, Sometimes I catch them, sometimes I don't. But that's one of my favorite spots for flounder. And the year after my daughter won that star tournament, I took my nephew, Brad Crockett, and he was 8 years old. And we were catching, I took him out of school, and we went on my wave runner to go flounder fishing.
That's awesome.
And I wanted to put him on 50,000. And so that year, Skipper Mock's son, Corey Mock, also the same age, him and Brad Crockett are still friends. We're standing side by side, and I'm throwing back then, a strawberry red shrimp tail, Kelly Wiggler. And I had one on each rod. And my little nephew, Brad, gets a bird nest in his reel. And so I just reach over and I grab his. I said, here, fish with mine. I untangled his. I threw it out about 20 yards, and whatever hit it hit it and went to the bottom. And I went, oh, Brad. And he goes, what's wrong?
Just grab the rod. Don't say anything. Grab the rod.
I said, I've got the winning fish on the end of this rod. I knew it the minute he hit it. It was 6-pound flatty.
Wow.
And, that's just the way it goes. Some people would consider handing that rod to the kid and letting him bring it in. But we've been to a polygraph test with my daughter.
No, I get it, yeah.
And, it's just the way it goes. And I knew the minute it hit, he went to the bottom, and I knew how big a fish it was. So that year, Brad was an ounce to tie, Corey Mock, 2 ounces to win. Corey won it.
That's awesome, though. That's a cool story. Well, I mean, I actually am really interested if you've ever pursued them on fly. I know that Skipper Ray used to tie like a clouser for him, but he used to tie the thread towards the eye of the hook so it could form a cone. And that would be his way of making sure that the clouser would sit on the bottom and not grab any grass, so he could fish it real slow and just hop it and hop it. And then I know that Rick likes to do a double system. So a clouser 1, clouser 2, clouser in the middle is heavy, I believe, right? So, or One of them is heavy. And so that, and from what he tells me, they always take the second one.
Well, it's funny you say that. Is brings up a memory of Ali and myself fishing on that little John Dory. There used to be a channel north of Green Island that was more defined than it is now.
Oh, the old gospel cut. Yeah.
Yeah. And we walked the edge of that, and we would throw, called it a double hootie, a grub on the front and a finger mullet on the back on just single hook, and throw double. And I'll tell you what, that was a deadly combination.
Yeah.
But then with time, I realized I could throw double hootie in a 3-inch, grub, and I don't think I ever caught 2 flounder at one time, but we pretty successful on catching them.
Well, what was one of your best flounder days? You mentioned like a flounder session is good when you get about 10 eats, right?
Well, I think at one time the limit was 10. Of course, way back it was 10, and now it's 5. I've had many days that I've got a limit at 10. Back in the day when it was 10,
That's crazy.
inside the arroyo, by what they call the old drug shack. It's no longer there, but we'd walk that shoreline, and when they were in there, you'd almost have to stand still and you just stand flat-footed for 30 minutes, and you'd get all your flatties.
Did you spend a lot of time waiting in that area?
Yeah, when the chips are down and we're in a tournament, we'll always got to give that place a shot. And we've been successful there a time or two. And I remember I was fishing with Charlie, buddy of mine. The wind was blowing out of the north, and it was blowing so strong, there was no way we were going to catch a flatty. So we went up the arroyo and got on the north side and walked that shoreline, banged our flatty, and that was the only one that came in that day.
Wow. I mean, that's awesome. That's one of the things I've just never gotten good at. And now that I'm exploring a little bit in the conventional game, it's something that I would be open to considering, but it's not something that I'm good at all yet, because I haven't really done any of it,
Yeah. Well, it going back to the once my kids got a little older and my wife Sandy went fishing with me, man, I'll tell you what, she got the bug about the time I was kind of not feeling like fishing as strong as
and getting burnt out.
Kind of get a burnout, and she started fishing. I had a Maverick, and before that we had a wave runner. We'd go on a wave runner after work. She'd get out of work at 4. She was a teacher, and she said, get the wave runner ready, and I'd get everything ready and have it hooked up. She'd burn in here right after school from Brownsville. And
Let's go.
Yeah, and we'd go. Didn't take us long. We'd catch fish, come back, so then I went from that wave runner to shoal water, and that shoal water for a long, long time. Very comfortable boat. Then I bought a Maverick, bought it in Florida, sent a guy to pick it up, and that was a perfect boat. I mean, that was fish everywhere we could.
Yeah.
And some places we shouldn't, way in the back, we never got in trouble like getting stuck on low tide or anything. But Sandy and I were on it one afternoon one morning with our friend of mine that's a banker, and he won a boat in a drawing from the CCA. So we took him fishing. He caught a couple of good fish, Gordon. And on the way home, he says, hey, Rick, he says, I won that boat, that CCA drawing, that 21 cat. He says, I need to sell it. I really don't use it. I said, well, I'll call around. I know some people. And as soon as I dropped him off, he shut the door. Sandy looks at me and she says, why don't we buy it? Gotta love that.
That's some enthusiasm a lot of people don't have.
Yeah, let's buy that one. So we've got that boat, and a lot more comfortable.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
One of the things I feel like I may have asked it. I don't, but I want to make sure I did. what was like, or how did you start learning the flounder so well? Again, because you spent so much time with guys who did the sight fishing thing. The thing that kind of is really perplexing to me is how you went from, because you went bait, lure, fly, or bait, lure, sight fish, and then get back into flounder somehow. Is there someone that you started figuring it out with together, like, you know, as a friend, and started, you know, both being like, hey, they're fish doing this and this, and so on and so forth?
Well, like I said, the flounder, and you said it, you nailed it early. You've got to be patient. I told you the patience you have to catch a flounder, or you have to have that kind of patience to catch a big trout. You're not gonna rush up on them. Even with a poling skiff, you're still gonna slap the water.
It's even worse than a poling skiff if you try to go too fast.
Yeah. So slow, patience, and you said something earlier about Skipper Ray using a clouser,
The cone ones, yeah.
the cone ones, to bounce them off the bottom. And I've had, you can imagine how many people ask me, how do you catch a flounder? You bump it off the bottom, don't you? Well, yeah, sometimes. But truth be known that I fish my lure for flounder just like I would for a trout or a red in water that it's not sight fishing water. I fish it the same way, and the best depth of water that I've ever fished in was 18 inches of water, and we've caught fish on a drop off, flounder on a drop off, but the bigger ones seem to be a little bit in the 18-inch water, knee deep, and work it slow. They're there.
Oh, interesting. That's so awesome.
And you have to target the flounder because you're not going to catch one on the flats, on the sand.
Rarely.
You might
Absolutely
see one.
rarely.
You might see one and you get a shot at them. But the minute they scoot off and leave their little burn trail.
It's kind of a cool-ass burn trail, though. Looks like a little race car got up.
Yeah.
I actually just recently sight fished one with Brett Greco up in Peyton's, like on the outside of the spoils. And it was a north wind, or slightly north wind, just real quiet. Like, it wasn't like it was howling or anything. It was just like through 8 miles an hour max, pulling down the final spoil. And just, well, I had my trout fly on, and we see one, and I was like, oh, flounder. Flipped it over, and one of those where they actually eat. You know, typically they don't, but it was like, fly came in, and it's kind of like that little the video that kind of blew up a couple years ago of the guy. There's a flounder sitting on an edge, and you just see like a white paddle tail. It goes just like that.
Well, I think earlier mentioned about Tom Kilgore making a big trout, angry enough to strike that fly by hitting it right close to the nose, over and over, because that big old trout, I already saw him, and he's throwing at it. It's not going to eat, and out of frustration, that trout will hit that bait, and I remember Tom saying that. So I did sight fish one flounder that way, and I actually got on the sun was coming up, and I got on the west side of that flounder in clear water, and I was able to get close enough to him where I could drop that bait over the top of him and just slap the water right on top of him, and he inhaled it. Saw him.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so. What about the snook? You get into a lot of the snook stuff?
Well, I'll go back. What my dad and myself, when we got that shoal water original one back like in 1984 or 86, the CCA put out a bounty for snook.
Really? The tagging program or the research deal?
It was a research deal to where they sent them to the hatchery. They brought some shrimp baskets over here to Jim's Pier.
Yep.
And they had a bounty from $75 for a certain size up to $100 or maybe $125 for a bigger snook.
Yeah, I think Gib Little was a big proponent of that program. He helped him a lot.
So we went to the port and actually stopped at Gordon's bait stand, and we just got a dozen hand-picked shrimp, which were, like U-10s, big shrimp, and we were going to go after those shrimp. Yeah. And so we got over by the port, and we start sticking them. But we were ready. We had 2 big ice chests, 180 quarts with aerators.
And shit, yeah.
So we had snook in there. We were going to take them to Jim's Pier to put them in their baskets, and then they'd call and they'd drive down and pick them up in their tanks.
Mm-hmm.
So we wind up catching seven snook, but we ran out of that dozen shrimp that we bought. We only bought a dozen shrimp,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we had like 3. So we had a cast net. We threw a cast net where we were fishing on the shoreline, and we caught some crawfish. And there,
Really? Was there a big rain that year?
there was a big rain that week.
Oh,
And
there
the
you
bite
go.
was on, but the crawfish. I mean, they were the size of the shrimp we bought, and so we wind up with our 7, and we took them to Port Isabel. Called Gilbert Vela. He met us over and we put those fish in the basket. And by the time I got to Harlingen, he called. He goes, "Hey, one of them didn't make it. He bellied up. We tried to keep him alive. He didn't make it. So you can come back and pick him up. I'll fillet him for you." Well, that. I don't think they ever had a success in breeding snook at the hatchery like they did with redfish.
Oh, I mean, that makes
that's been a
sense too. Yeah, I mean, that's why
tremendous. Gilbert Villa also worked with that snook program at the mouth of the river, and we were catching big snook, 40 inches.
On the Mexican
42.
side?
No, we were
In the arroyo?
On the U.S. side at the mouth of the river, like a second sandbar.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And the guy that turned me on to that was going back to Ali Bastedo.
Mexico man.
Yeah, he does have an airplane. So in the morning, he'll drink a cup of coffee in his plane and go to check the surf at the mouth of the river, and he can tell if the bite's on. I think he mentioned that there's an older man that was always there, and he'd see him, and he knew if the bite was on. So he'd call. He goes, "Hey, the bite's on. Let's see you in the morning." So, man, that was a epic fishing days, catching jumbo snook and schools of mullet headed south. And we were throwing, at that time, like a 6-inch hoagie on a 3/4 ounce lead head. I was throwing a 8.5-foot Fenwick rod with a bait caster.
No wonder you're hitting 40-inch snook. That's
Man, I'm telling you, that was a beauty. And funny story, Sandy and I, my wife, we had gone to church on Saturday afternoon, said, "Let's go snook fishing to the river." From the island, we're staying at the island.
Mm-hmm.
So we pack up and we go over there. And I think I might have had about 4 beer from the day before in my ice chest that I took. And we get over there, and there were some guys killing this. I mean, they were catching and releasing the snook, but they were catching them just a lot more than we were. And okay. I was throwing that. I was throwing a red and white hoagie, 6-inch, and they were throwing a storm bait that looks like a mullet. And when they were getting ready to leave, and I said, "Hey, what kind of bait are y'all throwing?" And they said, "Oh, we're throwing the storm bait." He says, "Here." He gave me one. I said, "Where are y'all going?" He said, "Well, we got to go. We don't have any beer, and they don't sell it till noon on Sunday." And I said, "Well, I've got plenty of beer. You can have mine. I'm drink beer in the morning."
Yeah.
So they stuck around and caught more snook, but we must have caught I don't know, between 10 and 12 snook, and average they were all over 30s.
Oh, it's a big
largest
fish.
one was 42, and of course, like Ali was saying, the guys from Mexico they weighed on the sandbar towards the U.S. side, and they were going, "Hey, give us a snook. Don't let them go. Don't let them go."
Nah.
So, and then the game warden would show up, and he'd burn on his lights, and the guys from Mexico would walk on back to Mexico, and we'd come in and show them license and all. But that was a trip of a lifetime too.
Have you seen so upping like on the other side of the nation, sort of in like the Cabo coastline, there's those Pacific snook, those giant Pacific snook that they'll live line for, and they're those big dropping rigs for, and they're like 42, 47-inch snook out there in the surf, and it's kind of like over there, it's kind of like the big trout vibe, or you would say like almost like the flounder fishing vibe. It's a patient deal and it's a locals deal. Like it's not really like anyone just goes and does it. Like you have to know someone that does it and stuff like that, which I think is kind of interesting. One of the points I wanted to make is I'm thinking about now, earlier you had mentioned about how you don't think that the limit really has affected the trout as much as people say, or something along the lines of it not being responsible for those big trout. I'm curious as to like what your take on that is.
Well, sometimes I feel that the people that are, I almost feel like they're protesting at the dock when I come in. They're going, "Hey man, you're always catching fish, and what do you do with all the fish?" And Allie brought some of that up. I've always if I caught my limit, I'm going to keep my limit. And we eat a lot of fish. My wife's an excellent cook. Our kids have all grown up eating fish. We hunt, we shoot a deer, we eat nilgai. Just, and I guess the only thing I can tell those guys, I said, you know what? The reason you think there's no big trout out there is because you don't know where they're at and you don't know how to catch them. But I've seen so many big trout about every time we go fishing. We don't catch them all the time, and you know that. You know why.
I learned that lesson yesterday and the day before that. And the day before, I know.
But here you've got an industry of boat manufacturers. In our case down here, Shallow Sport. Their boats are getting up in the price range of $80,000 to $120,000. And then the next thing you know, you have some guys that aren't fishermen, that have to do with some of the regulations of changing the rules, changing the limits. And you drop, you've got guys that buy $100,000 boat and they drop the limit of trout from 5 to 3. If you go out there and fish and you see as many fish as we see, don't always catch them, but we see them. And so that's one reason. I don't think that the anglers that are out there right now are
getting the most bang for their buck.
Well,
I'm sort of, I may have missed the point you're trying to make.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is that here the industry is marketing boats. They make it very easy to own a boat. They'll give you a 10, 15, 20 year note on them like a house, because who's going to throw 120 at them? There's very few people that can and do. But the average guys that I see out in the bay, they've got the radio turned up loud. They're enjoying it.
That's kind of me sometimes.
And I don't think they impact the numbers that some of the people are saying. And
let me play devil's advocate here, just for the fun of it. I feel like the $100,000 example, I understand it, but at the end of the day, like, who's telling these people to take out the loan for $100K to go catch 3 trout? You know, like no one's saying they can't do it on a Shearwater, or no one's saying they can't do it on a glassed-in boat with 25 horsepower on the back. You know, so I think that, I understand the point, but realistically, like, at least for someone like, I mean, you mentioned it yourself, like, you've seen so many big trout. I mean, I've seen quite a few, and I'm learning more about how to really truly target them and doing it right, especially coming from someone who was doing it the wrong way for so long. But I do feel like the trout limits have done a lot more good than bad, even if they're not innately directly responsible for like the increase in trout that we're seeing. I feel like at least it's making people aware, sort of, in the absence of, there really wasn't any of that before. In fact, before the limits, I think there was almost like a protestful fight between guys like me, which were guys that were like, we need limits. Because I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to tell you what I think. Like, there was a point where I was advocating for no trout being kept. Like, I was one of those people. And I know it sounds crazy, but to be fair, I prefer a trophy fishery over a grocery store. Like nobody's dropping all that money to go get groceries. You know what I mean?
Right. I know what you mean. And at the end of the day, it brings light to the conservation edge of it, like you're saying. It brings light to those guys that they're not only because they have a $100,000 boat, they're going to go out there and fish 7 days a week and have limits every time. You know, they're going to go. Those guys are weekenders. The guys that
The pretenders.
yeah, well, and the guys that actually have a job and have to work, they can't fish like a retired guy that can go whenever he wants or whenever the weather's just right. If I want to go fishing today, I'll go fishing. I'm sure the numbers have increased for that reason. They have to. That's just that's what it is. You reduce the limit of fish being killed, we're going to get an increase, but we have a real big increase of trout, 12 to 15, 18-inch trout, just a lot of them. And if we keep that limit at three, that's plenty of fish to eat. And at the end of the day, it gives the rest of those fish time to mature up to big trout.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, for example, you personally, since you are so passionate about the flounder, were there any changes when they went from 10 to 5 when you were really into it?
No, the funny thing about flounder fishing is there's been years that we fish them just as hard as the previous year when we had a good year, and they're just not here. You know, I don't know if the migration migrated them. They might have migrated to different area. Might be areas I don't fish. I don't travel too far from. Even though I put in at South Padre Island by sunset at that ramp because I live there, I don't go to Port Mansfield and fish anymore. I don't go to the land cut. I haven't been to the land cut in 15 years.
And we'll fix that. Don't worry.
If we can catch fish a couple 100 yards from my front door, out in front of that sandbar, that's where we'll fish. But we mostly like to go to the west side and target bigger fish every time.
One thing I find about the west side, because of how quick access to deep water is, at least we're talking about the southwest side, I feel like those fish are so much more tidal dependent. Like they almost feed similarly to the fish in South Bay, to where they actually feed aggressively on the tide. And then when it's lackluster, they kind of don't really do anything. Like the other day, me and Ryan Sparrow found a couple up on the west side. And what I think was going on was the tide was trying to fall out of a cove, and the wind was acting against the tide, right? And so it was causing the water to stagnate. And those, like, it was cool. Like, I have a lot of really cool footage, and I'll show it to you. But you could see the trout, and it was weird. The further east you went, it was all trout, and then the middle was redfish, or the middle was mullet, and then the extremity was redfish. And the trout they weren't feeding. I mean, we obviously we caught a couple, but they weren't like truly like scavenging or hunting. They were more so like, I have some really cool Nat Geo footage I'll show you. But like I have one video where there's 3 of them, and one of them swims around, turns like this, and so it's one facing this way, one that way, one this way, and they all look, they just lined up. It's like, it's so cool, but it's like that was deep water fish that moved up skinny for a split second. Everything coincided at the right place, right time, and they were there. Yeah, that's the one thing that, you know, acts against me wanting to fish there so much is like when it's not on, it's a ghost town, and it's a bad one at that, because then the water gets dirty and you don't even want to be there. Like,
well, when the water gets dirty, you got to figure out what little cove you want to sneak into and get some wind protection to.
With what water right now?
Oh yeah, that's what I've heard. You know, Brian sent a video that bay is bone dry. Yeah. Unusually low.
No, you can't even, like, if I try to get into the creek behind Stover Point, it's all dry. I mean, I'd have to stop my boat like 150 yards outside of Stover Point to walk in. Yeah. It's nice though because it's funneling some of the fish in, but you have to play the depth, right? You got to know what you're doing, like, which is, helps me. But at the end of the day, it's like you can't do it too much, then they get too smart. What do you got on there?
I've kind of gone through. Well, there were some back in. Would sound like a buddy of mine, Tim Bothwell, back in 2007. No, somewhere back around that year, we had a hurricane that actually made a pass through the island.
I'm really curious about that, actually. Do you know exactly where?
It was about 4 miles
north of Green Island?
North of, no, it was probably about even with Green Island. Right in that area, there was a pass that went through all the way through the island. And once again, Allie and I were playing racquetball here in Harlingen, and we're seeing this guy who was rubbing his hands in the locker room. And we mentioned something about it because he was rubbing his hands pretty hard. And he says, man, I've been cleaning fish all morning, man. My hands hurt. And so right away we're going, oh, really? He says, man, I was in the surf. There's a pass over there. And he said, it's solid redfish, big redfish.
I bet it was next level.
Ankle deep, shin deep, just schools of red. And you'd hook one and there'd be 4 or 5 following that one. So Allie and I went down there and we drove down to the beach and we got out and walked. I mean, just shin deep, and it just redfish everywhere coming in and out of that pass out front. And a week later, my dad wanted to go, and I couldn't go, so he took my truck and he tried to forge that pass and lost my truck.
Is there any other stories you want to bring up? Anything else that you're thinking of? I know we briefly went over TIFT. If you want to talk about some of your TIFT experiences with your wife and daughter, you're more than welcome to. I'd like to go over them if that's something you want to. I know we briefly went over it, but maybe a specific one that you have in mind, or et cetera.
Well, like I said, TIFT has always been a family fishing situation and bring a lot of people together. We get to see a lot of our friends that are from out of town that continue to fish, and we meet their kids or grandkids, and life goes on. And now with our grandkids, they're starting to introducing them to fishing and hunting like I was introduced, and hopefully they'll have that passion throughout and stay off their iPads and iPhones.
Okay, I mean, let me ask it like this: is there any fishing story or fishing moment that you are most proud of, or one of your fondest memories? Regardless, it can be with anyone or anything, but on the water, doing what you love, either flounder fishing, trout fishing, or red fishing.
I think one of the ones that fondest one that will stay close to me is when Allie called one afternoon and he says, hey, get your dad and meet me over here in Boca Chica. He said, the bite's on. And my dad at the time was about 89 or 90 years old, still fishing, still golfing, very active. And we pull up over there. Allie's already in the water hooking up, and my dad gets out in his long pants. He rolls them up. He's wearing tennis shoes, and he gets out there. It's a little, when you're in the surf and you have a little surge of waves, and you're 91 years old.
A little hairy.
And so I was staying real close to my dad, but I'll tell you what, he charged out there and he was catching fish, and that was probably one of my fondest memories of a good fishing trip with my dad. We've had a lot of epic trips with my dad where just, the famous one was my dad and I at the land cut catching redfish back near Candyland where I told you. And I said, Dad, we've already got our limit. And he says, the fish were still alive. And back in those days, the biggest ice chest that I think that we ever had were the 48 igloos, which didn't hold much. So I said, we've already got a limit. He said, well, count the fish. And they were on the floor of the boat of that Glastron. And I said, well, we already got our limit. He said, throw 2 of them back and we'll each catch one more and then we'll head home. So I pick one out and I throw him out and he swims off. I pick another one up. They're all alive, right? In the winter, February, cold water, those redfish stay.
They're really strong. Yeah.
So I throw a second one out and he hooks up. He says, throw another one back.
Throw them all out.
He loved that. He loved it. So.
Oh, man, that's funny. Okay, well, so the way I like to end these is I like to ask 2 questions. First one, is there anything that, like, I mean, looking back at the things that you've done, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently?
Well, I'm pretty satisfied with the amount of time I've spent on the water, more than I deserve, maybe.
That's a bold statement. I feel like no one can say they deserve it.
Well, as
especially someone who clearly has put so much time in and effort. I feel like the more effort you put in, the more you should deserve it.
To a point, but like I said, I was starting to get burned out when my wife got excited about fishing. That put me back into fishing, and now with the grandkids, put me back into fishing. So
you ain't getting no breaks.
Well, I wouldn't say no breaks, but there's times that I go out there and just watch them fish.
I'm just playing,
and enjoy just being out there. And that's a key right there, is just enjoy being out there. If you catch a fish, it's a bonus. It's rare we get skunked, but we have been.
You know what teaches you that, exactly what you just said, what teaches you that very well is consistently fly fishing for big trout.
Yeah.
You come home empty-handed over and over and over and over again. The funniest part is, and I mentioned it when I got here, like I spent 3 years or 2 years only targeting them from the skiff on fly. Man, I probably landed at least 6 in 1 year and maybe 5 in the next year. And I only caught 2 of the first and then 2 of the second, I believe. So I wasn't really putting up any numbers. And it was the minute that I was like, all right, let me just... Instead, I've put so much work into my casting, into all the spots, into understanding the way the water moves and the current and the tide and this, that, and the other thing. What if I just moved a little bit deeper and got off my damn boat?
Yeah.
Game changer. Yeah, I totally agree, though. It's 100% a zero-sum game unless you're absolutely like doing the right thing. So I 100% empathize with the way you said that.
Well, if we're going to go fishing, I don't look at the tides.
Well, that's not smart.
Well, I'm telling you what, I'm going to go fishing anyway.
Well, obviously, right? You look when you're on the boat. When you're driving to the spot is when you look. So you want to know how close to the edge you want to get. Is that a better way to put it?
You don't forget, I fished long enough that there weren't GPSs around to get out there at night. That think of a story like that before we had on that little Boston whaler with Wade and I. We decided to go fishing at night. We left the island, but a little before dark, and we ran into a boat that got stuck on the skinny on the sand. And
the drum boat?
It was we were in that little Boston whaler, and.
I meant, did you hit the sunken drum boat, like up on the east side? No,
we weren't that far when somebody got stuck. They were closer to the convention center, and we helped them. There were some older people, and we helped them out. And it's getting dark on us. We wanted to get to our spot by dark to fish. Well, we got a little behind, and then it got real dark. And the next thing you know, we're, pitch dark, lost, and a little bit of overcast. I said, well, we're going to stick it out. And we stayed out there. In the morning, we woke up as the sun was coming up, and we didn't know where we were for a little while. We were by Green Island. South wind had drifted all the way over there.
That's crazy. You guys didn't wake up like at least beached up on one of the spoils, considering must have been a long way to get all the way over there.
Yeah, well, we burned 6 gallons of gas and ran out at the convention center on the way home the next morning.
6 gallons, 6 gallons at a time. That's what I'm going to call this episode.
That's it, man. I'll tell you. So, yeah, we get out there and enjoy it, and if we can't go, we don't go.
Yeah,
if the tide is perfect and we can't go, we don't go.
Yeah. Well, whenever we fish, I'll check the tide for you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
All right. Last question I like to ask is, as if you're talking, think to your, your grandkids. If they're like, 14, 16, maybe 18, just younger kids, because the question is as if these kids want to get a job in the outdoors, a career in the outdoors, what is a piece of advice that you would give them?
I guess the first one would be patience if you're going to fish or hunt. It goes with anything. Your patience for a successful result is discipline, and just observe the people you're around that are positive impact on you, whether it's at work or in the water or wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of impact, and it's going to just reward you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Whether it's for work, for fishing, or for hunting, is sometimes my wife will say, "Hey, you just went to the store for a little bit of grocery. What took you so long?" "Well, I ran into so and so."
Mm-hmm.
You got to make time to visit with people. Make the time.
Yeah, like put the effort in,
Yeah.
like build that community, or build that, network that you have, and like, what's the word? Like, tend to the garden. That's the best way to explain it. Like, and
I would say so.
This is one of the things I've learned, is I've like taken my projects more seriously, and I haven't had enough time to talk to old friends, and obviously like new friends come in and stuff. You realize that like friendships don't last, or at least relationships don't last, unless you always put the effort to keep it going. If not, it just goes out like a candle.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, 1 hour and 15 minutes, except I think only the first 2 minutes we were just bullshitting, so I'll cut that out. But with that being said, man, I mean, we kind of did it already. Sounds like we did everything we needed to do. Is there anything else you want to mention?
No, just going to this another memorable trip, and there are a lot of them. I went fishing with a couple of guys from the county. Took my boat. They dropped me off to catch. I was targeting flounder that morning, and I had already caught my fish, and those guys hadn't come back to pick me up in about an hour and a half. And I thought, man, they broke down or forgot me or whatnot.
Must be having trouble catching fish.
And a little bit goes by, and I hear an airplane in the sky, and I look over to the south, and sure enough, I recognized it was Allie. He was coming in his little Cessna. And he flies over the top of me there at marker 4 on the edge of the intercoastal. I was waiting for the guys to pick me up. And he circles, goes north, turns the plane into the wind, slows it down, and he opens his side window, and he points with his arm back towards the shoreline behind marker 4. Well, I turn around immediately. I start walking to that shoreline, and he circled back around. And man, I'm telling you what, I saw a 30-inch, or if it was 30, it was 32, big old trout. And I throw I was throwing a Kelly Wiggler shrimp tail. It was either strawberry red or a purple.
Uh-huh.
And I saw that trout, and I threw, and she hit that bait, and man, exploded. Her mouth looked, I could stick my whole hand in her mouth. And she's swimming at me, right up to me, starts shaking her head, and boom, bait comes out. And she just swims off like a snake, like you said, just not scared.
Wow. Okay.
I've had my son when he was young, "Don't tell him where we caught all these fish." I said, "Well, son, most of them won't believe us."
Yeah. That, and most people sometimes don't time the tides right, or don't know. They just know the fish were there.
Yeah. So
it's like, good luck getting, a big boat up to where, we may be finding those big fish, More power to you if you try to do it.
Well, we get out and walk.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Whenever we fish on my boat, we'll just drive over there and pull it down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rick, this has been awesome, man. All we have to do is just get on out of here, my friend.
All right, buddy.
Cool.